title change, Designing for Interoperability. Thank you. Okay, so 3 years ago, Ethereum users only had to think about one chain and one chain only, Ethereum. Today, they're navigating between Base, Optimism, Arbitrum, Zora, zk-Sync, Blast, Polygon, and dozens of other chains. As the Ethereum community has aligned on a roll-up-centric scaling solution, we've recently seen an explosion of new L2s being launched, including Unichain. This shift from a single chain environment to a new multi-chain landscape represents a fundamental shift in how people interact with the blockchain. Think back to just a few years ago, everything happened on Ethereum mainnet. It was relatively simple and straightforward. You had one network, one gas token, but it was incredibly expensive and slow. Today, in this multi-chain world, L2s have dramatically made transactions cheaper and faster. Swapping a token today takes less than a few cents and just a few seconds. Oh. But somehow we've also made it more confusing to use than ever before, as it introduces new complexities that are pushed to the user. Okay, so I know many of our audience members today are seasoned pros at navigating today's crypto UX, but I think it's important to remind ourselves what a realistic journey looks like today, particularly the journey of a new user. Okay, so say I recently watched an adorable TikTok of Mudang, and I want to buy some Mudang token. And I know that it's a Solana token, but for the sake of this prezzo, let's pretend that it's on Base. First, I would have to buy ETH through a fiat on-ramp provider like MoonPay and bridge my ETH from mainnet to Base through an external app like Superbridge, and finally, swap for Mudang on a DEX like Uniswap. To buy this token, I just had to complete at least 3 separate transactions across 3 separate interfaces. This experience has led me on a long detour from my original intent, and the magic of Web3 is lost in this fragmented journey. As a user, I should not have to know all of these terms, services, chains, and jump through this many hoops to get what I want. So let's unpack some of the core pain points in that flow. The first hurdle is what I call the ETH first problem. ETH is treated as a first-class citizen in virtually every single dApp. Before a user can do anything meaningful on-chain, they need to first purchase ETH, often through a complex fiat on-ramping process, and understand the concept of gas and why it must be paid in ETH. And then to access tokens on other chains, you have to bridge your ETH to the other network to pay for gas on that network. And then you have to maintain all these different ETH balances across multiple networks. And so one of the main CX tickets we get at Uniswap from our users is, I already have Ethereum, why do I need different Ethereums to get the token that I want? And then so this leads to this issue of duplicate tokens and asset fragmentation. Once a user has bridged and starts using that chain, they're required to track their assets across multiple chains and multiple versions of that same token. This is incredibly annoying and makes token management and token selection a nightmare for our users. So this is like an example of how it might show up in our interfaces. This is a Uniswap wallet. You can see that I have 4 different ETHs in my wallet. I can't easily see how much of this single token that I own. It's hard to understand how much money I've made or lost with this token. And most frustratingly, I can't spend it all at once, even though it's supposed to be the same token. This problem is even worse when I'm trying to spend that token. Every time I swap, I have to think about what chain it's on and find the one that I need from a list of tokens that look identical. And this is only going to get worse as more and more chains are launched. And so as Ethereum scales, we need to upgrade the way we interact with it as well. And so I want to pose this question: how can our interfaces help our users better express what they want by focusing on what matters? And also, this challenge is not unique to Web3. And so to zoom out of crypto for a second, many of the most successful Web2 apps today have also evolved over the years to become more quote-unquote intent-centric and better at anticipating the needs of the user. This is Uber's UI between 2012 and 2016. I don't know if people remember this, but in the early days, Uber had two main input fields on their ride request screen. It required people to manually set their pickup location first and then their destination. You can see on the two screens here that the main CTA is actually set pickup location. Not only did this add extra friction for the user, most of the times it led to super poor pickup experiences from inaccurate location input by the user or inefficient pickup routes. Fast forward to today, this is their current UI. Now, there's only one simple where to field. Uber realized that what the rider cares most about is their destination. Their mission was to get people where they want to be instead of just getting picked up by a car. The rest of the heavy lifting, such as accurate location tracking, efficient pickup coordination, route optimization, that is all handled in the background. Another similar example is Airbnb. Airbnb started out as a way for conference attendees like us who couldn't afford to stay at a hotel to rent out rooms from strangers. Because of that, this was their very first UI. What they built was centered around finding the event you were attending and the city that it was going to be, and it was going to surface you a bunch of rooms in that area. But obviously, they later realized that what travelers cared most about were two things: where they want to go and when. By simplifying their interface to focus on these core needs, Airbnb created a way more intuitive experience that better served their users' goals. So in both of these examples, the core needs of the users and the core offerings of these two platforms have not changed. Uber users still just need to get somewhere, and Airbnb users just need a place to stay while they're traveling. What's changed is how it's being framed to the user. It puts the focus on what they need instead of how to get what they need. This makes for a much simpler and opinionated user experience. And so this is the kind of simplification that we need for crypto as well. And the best way to achieve that is to build on a shared infrastructure so that we can have interoperability across all chains. Things like native bridging, Superchain ERC20s, cross-chain intents, and more, these standards are all going to work together under the hood to offer the best UX for our users. And this may seem like a lot of new features that add a ton of complexity, but by pushing the complexity deeper down the stack and away from the users, it actually makes for a much more simple and intuitive UX. Right now, we are exposing all of the technical constraints and challenges to our front end and forcing our users to bear that cost. So when cross-chain transactions can happen in hundreds of milliseconds and only cost a few cents, we can start to design our products in more interesting and opinionated ways. This is exactly why Unichain is built on the OP stack, so that we can leverage these UX benefits of being part of this ecosystem. So what does this actually look like? Let's look at some examples of how our interfaces can evolve in this Superchain future. Keep in mind that these are just concepts that scratch the surface of what's possible. So one obvious move is to unify all of the token balances in our UI. This reduces clutter, it reduces complexity, it is easier for you to track and manage a token's value in your portfolio. But it's not just about aesthetics. It unlocks a new mental model for how to spend and use your tokens. With a unified balance, it will be possible to spend tokens across multiple chains as one token in one tap. In this example, I'm trying to spend all of my combined ETH across 4 different networks and sell it to USDC. I don't need to worry about making 4 separate transactions. It's all taken care of under the hood. The app is allocating different percentages of my balance and performing 4 sell transactions in one batch. In a similar vein, another use case is rebalancing your portfolio in one click. As token prices move up and down, you may want to reallocate your portfolio based on your risk profile, and this just makes it a lot easier for you to manage your assets. Another idea that is unlocked with both the unified balance and these batch transactions is this cash-first UX. And this is what the design team at Uniswap is also super excited by, is to sort of reframe and aggregate your stable coins as this cash balance in your app. You can spend and receive USDC, USDT, DAI, etc. interchangeably and use it as like your default payment method so that you don't really have to worry about like swapping between different tokens that you own. Users can onboard via cash or stables, and we can easily frame it as topping up your wallet, topping up your app, or depositing cash into whatever dApp you're creating, which is a way more familiar and intuitive mental model. Another benefit of framing it as cash is that it can be personalized to the user's local currency and make it a lot more accessible to users all around the world, whether it be baht, yen, euros, pounds, etc. So much of crypto today is still sort of framed in terms of US dollars, which kind of force international users to anchor prices in terms of USD. So yeah, this is like an example of minting an NFT and using this cash balance as your default payment method. I don't know if you can see. Or like buying a token with this cash balance. So the point is, users should just be able to express what they want, not how to get it. And so going back to my very first example of buying Mudang coin, if I wanted to buy 1,000 baht of Mudang, I should just be able to do just that. And all of that other bridging, swapping, on-ramping, all of that should be taken care of under the hood. Just like this. So what really excites me about this future is how it empowers us as builders to create super opinionated products. It isn't now about exposing every technical detail to users and overwhelming them with different choices. It's about understanding their intent and handling the complexity on their behalf. So instead of spending our time as a designer, as an engineer, educating users about networks, gas costs, bridging mechanisms, we can actually now start to focus on designing the experiences we actually want to create, the ideal experience. Thank you.